in these documentaries, like they're talking to someone.
No.
Yeah. My name is Thanos Intravanes. I'm a junior at Pomona.
I'm James. I'm a junior at CMC.
So I'm Annie Voss. I go to Pitzer. I'm a sophomore.
My name is Brianna. I am a senior at Pomona.
My name is Kenyatta. I am currently a junior at Pomona College.
My name is Shafali. I'm a first year.
My name is Destiny Garcia. I use she, her pronouns. I go to Scripps. I'm a senior on the environmental analysis on the science track major.
I'm a math major.
I'm majoring in environmental analysis on the national science track.
I'm majoring in cognitive science and data science.
I am a joint CS math major.
Majoring in environmental analysis with a leadership sequence.
I'm majoring in molecular biology.
Pronouns are she, they. I'm bisexual and I'm of South Asian background.
I use she, her pronouns, and I am white and white again.
Pronouns, he, him, straight, race, black, ethnic background, I guess African American and Japanese.
I'm a Latino student, straight.
He, him pronouns. I'm white and I'm straight.
I use he, him pronouns. I'm white, grew up in Greece.
My pronouns are she, her. I identify as queer and I'm Vietnamese.
Currently enrolled in math colloquium, CS colloquium, and differential equations with Ed Ray Goins.
Yeah, so this semester I'm in environmental geology. I also took stats at Pomona.
I'm taking a molecular biology lab right now, biochemistry with lab.
I took oceanography my sophomore year, and then I took volcanology last semester.
I took Intro to Cognitive Science in the fall of 2023, but that's it for Pomona STEM classes.
So a couple years back I was in Professor Prokopenko's Intro Geology, and that had a focus on oceanography. And then currently I'm taking Professor Perilla Castillo's hydrogeology class.
I transferred to Pomona last year, so far at Pomona I've taken real analysis, probability, shapes and surfaces, and abstract algebra.
I used to be in the, technically I still am in the PSS 9 cohort, Pomona Science Scholars. I think it was a great way to introduce me into college, especially coming from high school in Greece, where I was not used to the American educational system. And it really allowed me to form connections with my classmates and my new professors. And it was a great introduction into U.S. college and U.S. life. It would definitely be harder to familiarize myself with classes and talking to people and approaching people to get help, because this is something that I didn't used to do in high school since I went to a really small high school, so I knew everyone. So it would probably be harder to transition into school.
Pomona College's first semester in its entirety is actually pass-fail. And we only have one non-STEM class in that set of 5. But, you know, that pass-fail, or a pass no credit as you called it, you know, alleviate some of that stress for, you know, super high performance.
I haven't had any STEM pass no credit classes. I mean, I know some people have chosen to do pass no credit, like, with some of my classes, but all of mine have been for credit.
I've taken general chemistry and genetics, introductory genetics, pass-fail, during my first semester at Pomona, and I think it really took the stress out of my freshman year, especially with all the other classes like ID1 that I thought were particularly hard for me.
My chem tests with Keck Science, there's been kind of a curve, and I think it's definitely interesting because there's not technically really any students that are actually getting an A in the class based on the tests, but it's still kind of graded on the same regular scale, which is kind of on par with my humanities classes.
I would say it probably helps me a lot.
I think that I feel like grade inflation exists throughout the college, so it's not necessarily specific to STEM, And I think that though having grade inflation in STEM classes has made me less stressed about how I perform on an exam.
You know, my stats class, I had a new professor. Her name was Alex Ziff. It was her first year at Pomona, and she had been a community college professor before that. And the way that she, like, I really do not like math. I'm a woman in STA. The M is sometimes there. But she talked about how she went to Stanford for grad school, and there was so much math that she freaked out and she dropped out. And then she ended up still being a statistics and policy professor, but it was overwhelming to her. And as somebody who like did not go to a college prep school, who had a very poor math background, you know, that was really encouraging to hear. And the way that she structured her class was really centered around, can you do the thing, and not do you have some conceptual understanding of the thing. She really was, I want you to have skills to accomplish this, which made me feel seen as someone who, you know, didn't take the traditional route into STEM that I feel like a lot of my peers took. And also seeing a woman being vulnerable about failing in academia, I feel like a lot of the female role models that we have are so accomplished and so girl boss, and that's amazing, but also we are imperfect humans and it's really nice to see someone being vulnerable about your ability to succeed even after you fail.
I think that I feel most represented by, there's a faculty member at Pomona who was a transfer student during his time as an undergrad, and being able to connect with him early on when transferring to Pomona was really helpful, because I feel like he has sort of just been in my corner advocating for me since I've been here. And being a transfer student, having to adapt to a new environment while also trying to make the most of 2 years before leaving can be hard, and I think that I've really appreciated having him as an instructor, owning up to maybe some of the failures that he's had in his own journey in STEM, and really emphasizing that if you persist at something, you can definitely get it done.
This is actually pretty baseline. The first black professor that I've had in a STEM class was actually at Pomona. Professor Ed Ray Goins, that's the differential equations class that I'm in now. Kind of an interesting journey to get there, you know, registration issues or otherwise. But, you know, here I am in this course. But here comes a professor who, you know, looks somewhat like me, you know, has, you know, some of my mannerisms that have been preserved through, you know, academia and academic success. You know, and that just, you know, instantaneously creates a sort of role model for me. As I see a lot of other people who look like me in roles that are not professorship, it was very both humbling and inspiring to see someone who looked like me, you know, reach that sort of pinnacle of academics.
I guess if we are like expanding the discussion of microaggressions to be what we've discussed in HSTEM, which is like pedagogical microaggressions or like mathematical microaggressions, the abstract algebra class that I took ran rampant with those, because I just felt like every time she was introducing a new idea or going through an example at class, there would be a point where she would just stop, say the rest is obvious, the rest is trivial, the rest is clear, anything like that, and then move on. And there's never any space for questions. And so I think a lot of the struggles that I had in that class came from not being able to voice when I had questions, and created an environment where even though I was in the class with peers that I knew and was generally comfortable with, sometimes it felt a little awkward asking them a question in class when the professor was just going to glaze over it anyways.
I mean, not in the sense of like, you know, oh, you're black, or maybe it kind of maybe was that, but I remember for my math colloquium last year, there was some rhetoric about like, am I actually supposed to be here? Not in terms of like, am I in the wrong room or something, but you know, am I supposed to be enrolled as like a college student? You know, granted, you know, I got there pretty late, all things considered, but this was the first time that they had transitioned the colloquium to a new venue, and this venue was at Pomona. I had gotten pretty lost because, Pomona is a very large campus. I think probably, 2, if not 2.5 times larger than Bud, which is a straight line and not labyrinthine at all. But, there was that rhetoric of, do you really, belong here if you can't even manage, just actually coming to the course itself?
I feel like Calc 2 was a class full of microaggressions for me, especially coming from a background that I didn't take a lot of math classes. My professor is saying the rest is algebra and similar phrases was really frustrating to me because I couldn't follow the content during class, so I usually had to go to mentor sessions, which was an amazing tool that Pomona Colleges provide. And I had to take the extra time and effort to learn the content compared to other students that had the background.
I don't think it was like a personal microaggression. There was this one quiz question that I and all the other students of color in the class kind of like talked about afterwards and thought was weird though. It was during the language processing section of like the class, and then there was a question on the quiz, and there were 2 questions, and they were sort of like real world applications of like language processing and like acquisition issues. And so the first question was like, what are like, on what levels of language processing would you have like disconnect when someone introduces themselves with like they them pronouns? And like essentially the question was kind of asking us to justify from a linguistic perspective why it would be okay to not use the correct pronouns. And so that was a little bit of like a personal microaggression. And then the other one that was actually like very what's going on it was a question on the same test. It was a second question, and it was about George Floyd, and it said that the officer who killed him heard him saying like this when he said this, and it was like what levels of language processing went wrong for him to hear something other than what he said. And that felt very unnecessary to bring up on a quiz about like a brutal murder. And it felt like one of those moments where it was like, apply this to your real life, but also this could definitely be a trigger, but probably not a trigger for most of the students because most of them were white. Yeah, that was interesting.
I feel like most of the people in these classes were Pomona, so I think they were getting like these emails and where it was like specifically geared towards like careers in geology or like environmental science, and I didn't really get these emails like as a script student. So I think just kind of making sure that these resources are available like 5C wide, or at least like available to the people within the classes that are being taken. Because they also had a bunch of like these seminars that were super interesting, but I actually had no idea about. So I think just like spreading that information a little bit beyond just Pomona.
I would say a lot of my Pomona classes obviously have a Pomona-specific syllabus, and they often will list all the resources available to Pomona students, especially for quantitative STEM classes. There's the Pomona Quantitative Skills Center, and I've seen this listed in the syllabi of some of my classes, but because I'm not from Pomona, because I'm from CMC, I'm sort of unsure of how to access these resources. And especially for some of the technically difficult mathematical assignments, I felt like I had a bit of a disadvantage compared to my Pomona peers without access to this resource, because there wasn't specifically anyone at CMC that would tutor the specific class. So I'd say these resource centers are a way for people to get help that may not be able to make the normal office hours times, or it's harder to reach the professor. So this is where I felt like there was a bit of a disconnect, and I wish there was either a possibility for other students at the 5Cs to be part of one of these resource centers, or just have more transparent information sort of regarding this.
I would honestly enjoy like an interactive like map or something or other like that. I would say that Pomona is probably one of the more labyrinthine of the campuses, especially if your home turf is not Pomona. Finding courses, finding buildings is a lot more difficult, I would say, as a non-Pomona student. And so having some, like, hey, you are here with respect to where the class you're looking for is, would be pretty helpful.
I think the biggest thing I wish I had was mentoring from people who had been through it before me.
I feel like a thing that Pomona is lacking is connections with graduate students. So at the moment, I'm trying to apply to grad schools, but I find it really hard to explore all the different avenues I have, just because Pomona does not provide a platform for us to contact graduate students and ask them questions. There are some ways that they are trying to improve in that aspect, like the chemistry seminars, but there's not a general platform which you can access to find all those contact information.
I think one thing that would honestly just be having more professors of color, because I feel like even right now with like classes that I'm looking for at Pomona, they all seem to be taught by white professors, which isn't like, it's a little like alienating always, and it's not to like discredit any of them. I'm sure that they're like great professors, but it's also just like, it's hard when every single class you're looking for has a white professor when that's not somebody that like you can sort of see yourself represented with.
As a transfer student, I guess that faculty were more hands-on, or were as hands-on with transfer students as they were with first-year students, because I feel like most often in STEM classes in your first year, there's a lot of encouragement to explore, to be uncomfortable with different subjects. Professors, I feel like, sometimes check in a bit more when they know they're working with first-year students, and I think while transfer students are very capable people, it can be kind of a weird adjustment coming from a community college or just coming from a space that doesn't teach math nearly as theoretically as Pomona tends to. And so I think that I would have wished to feel a larger support system in my classes. I think that a lot of the relationships in the STEM departments at Pomona and that most schools are formed in struggling through classes together your first and second years. And so being a transfer in some of these classes with a lot of juniors and seniors, a lot of those people already have those groups that they do math with. And so I found my way into some of those groups, or made groups with people who are also newer to the department, or just like worked mostly on my own in ways that like worked as well. But I think that I miss some of the community aspects that might have come out of being in this department from my first year.